were sharing some thoughts with me on my rant from just a while ago.
Yes.
Regarding the propensity for our leaders to simply, succinctly, perfectly state what the problem is without making any proactive steps to actually fix them.
Yes. What really attracted me to your rant at that time was the fact that you are trying to identify the statement of the problem. What's the problem actually, which must be identified, and which they really identify, but they always seek for aggressions to look for ways to justify the inadequacy of government to provide security. And I think at that point, it is very important to remind them that they're dealing with, or they are talking to Nigerians that have some level of intelligence, and maybe there are things you don't put out to the members of the public. For instance, the president finding it rather impossible or bizarre that a thing like that could happen. And this other man in the Senate, trying to find his way through the whole sieve of what happened and maybe make explanations for it in a proper manner as officials of government, as actors of state. Because there are some things you tell the members of the public and they begin to look at you with questionable eyes of whether you've been alive or you've been in this country all this while. Because it's not the first time it's happening. This is a recurring decimal of a complex nature of insecurities and attacks and conflicts and killing.
We're missing something. The Supreme Court's ruling
that's contained in the religious books, religious dresses we have these days. It's simple as we feel jolted that trying to turn it upside down. And of course, we have a situation also where a particular religious sect is trying to be a little too assertive.
So we'll come to the analysis of the Supreme Court's ruling or judgment. The interpretation, if you will, of it.
It means that for the average person who adheres to a particular religion, he can dress in a manner of that religion that suits him, and it's his or her fundamental right to dress in that manner. That it is a right that is basic and it's natural and cannot be derogated or deviated or violated against him or her to dress that portents of our religion, or maybe tends to send signals that, well, I belong to this sect and this is my practice. It's a fundamental right because it's a right provided even under the Constitution and under the international covenants that Nigeria has signed. So it's not a new thing, but for the particular mode of dressing, or whether it is fundamental or not, is something that has quite created a lot of furore, particularly in Europe. And the courts are very wary of giving that kind of blanket cover to a particular mode of dressing, knowing very well the nature of the society, knowing also very well the sensitivity of religious matters, and knowing very well. I think there are only two countries where this hijab culture is compulsory: Iran and Afghanistan. And apart from those countries, the courts have been very wary of making any pronouncements. They just leave it to government directives, even in core Islamic states. But then, if you look at it wholesomely from a very moral point of view, you discover that there's part of every religion that women should dress in a very particular way.
Oh, but back to the issue of the Supreme Court's interpretation. You said earlier on, or the interpretation rather, the Supreme Court's judgment. You said earlier on, you used the word anyone. Now, this matter particularly concerned students or pupils in public schools in Lagos State, and also specifically public primary and secondary schools in Lagos State.
Yes.
So how does it matter that primarily, that was the object or the subject in contention at the courts, from the High Court to Appeal Court to Supreme Court level? How does that suddenly affect everyone or anyone?
See, the issue is a very, very sensitive one. And in doing that, we have to be very mindful of certain sensibilities. Sensibilities was actually the word used also by the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg on that issue in the case of Henry Turkey, that human sensibilities vary. And if you make a dress code for a particular religion compulsory without the other persons who want to enforce their own, and it will create a whole lot of bedlam within the society. The implication therefore is that if it is a fundamental right, we have to look at the growing jurisprudence globally, from a global perspective, on whether the courts in Europe, in the courts in Africa, the courts in Latin America, and the United States, or even the core Muslim countries, that even that kind of authority to persons to dress in a particular mood, particularly in public spaces. And you discover that a lot of judgments, majority of those cases that were going to both the European courts and the European Court of Human Rights were coming from Turkey. It's an Islamic country, though non-Arabian, but a lot of those cases were coming from that end, and they were given different interpretations. First of all, the grounds of secularism. Secondly, on the grounds of prohibiting students from publicly displaying the apparel of their religion to the detriment of the others, because it could really bring conflict. And again, a lot of issues bordering on sentiments, on protection of the society, on keeping the religious prejudices at arm's length, we are brought into bear. And, we have a situation now where the Supreme Court had given that. And the particular reason why these courts were very wary of giving that kind of authority to people to dress that way was because they said they have to protect the rights of others.
I'm getting even more curious right now than I was.
What are those rights and how are they affected?
Not particularly. We'll get to those in a moment. However, now once again, and I refer to my earlier comments, this was a matter about dressing or dress code in schools in Lagos State, public primary and public secondary schools in Lagos. That's because once again, it was to their place of work. Can a banker dress that way to the bank? Can a Muslim dress that way to the oil rig?
I don't think
can a doctor dress?
There's no distinction, really, if you're talking about bank. For instance, in Leila Said against Turkey, the problem was an employee was asked to dress in a particular mood. And he said, no, it's against my religious destiny. And he was thrown off the job. But then she went to court. The court said, no, you can't compel him to dress in that particular mood. In another case, again, I think that here up against Switzerland, a company said, well, we want to be neutral. Whether you're Catholic or you're Jew or you're Confucius, whichever religion you adhere to, please dress casually in a normal manner. Don't dress in a manner that will represent your own religious doctrine. And somebody went to court and said, well, it's the company cannot stop me from expressing myself as a fundamental right by mode of dressing, by the sense of self-expression. And the court said, no, the policy of the company overtakes and overrides whatever mode of dressing you want to do. If the company says this is the way you must dress that way. So you look at it from the paradigm of the moods, the principles that dictate some of these authorities, in spite of the fact that it's a fundamental right. It's a right that must be expressed with every bit of maybe the context of society, the operational context of the society, remembering also the neutrality of the state in terms of secularism, remembering also the sensitivities that attach to religion, sensibilities, and maybe some bit of human emotional outburst that will come if religious issues are raised abnormally, particularly in these our days. When we are growing up, it doesn't make any difference if somebody is wearing hijab. Hijab is just the other one. There's this other one that covers the whole body. You only see the person's eyes. It's not tolerated in most of Europe, in most of the Western world, in most parts of Asia as well. But then in some of these cultures where religious tolerance is allowed, you'll see that such mode of dressing is also very required to keep excesses at bay in terms of moderation, in terms of decency, in terms of civility, It
is at Factor 9013 NigeriaInfo here in Port Harcourt. Supreme Court upholds students' rights to wear hijab to Lagos schools. It's still continues to generate some controversy throughout the country. Barrister Festus Oguche is my guest. However, we have to go for a commercial break now. We will return in a moment. The conversation will continue. Remember, you can join via Twitter and Facebook. We are live there at NigeriaInfo PH. WhatsApp on 0809 0306416. The phone numbers will be opened in a moment. The number is given as well. Do please stay with us. Hard Fast returns shortly.
politics, business, lifestyle, economy, social events.
A student rights to wear hijab to Lagos schools is the matter we're discussing right now. My guest once again, Barrister Festus Oguche. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Dio.
We're live on Twitter and Facebook at NigeriaInfo PH. WhatsApp on 0809 030 6416. Now, since this is a matter bordering largely on fundamental rights,
yes, it is,
rather than whether or not a person can practice the religion, which in itself is a fundamental right.
It is, yes.
What then is the problem with this? Because these fundamental rights are guaranteed in Nigeria and the institution of most countries, I believe. Nigeria is also a signatory to international treaties and conventions that guarantee these fundamental rights. As a matter of fact, these rights also include the right to practice one's religion freely, associate freely, move freely. That movement also could be enforcement of the right to religion as well, because you might need to move from your home to your place of worship or make some other movement in practice of that worship. Muslims need to travel to for Hajj to Saudi Arabia. Christians need to travel to Jerusalem and other places like that. So why is this a problem? Why was the Lagos State government presumably against the idea, and why has the judgment of the Supreme Court generated this much controversy if at the heart of it is simply guaranteeing the fundamental rights of Muslims?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Dio. First of all, you see, with the collapse of monarchy in Europe, it is that an inclination to a particular religion in terms of dressing, clearly, that mode of dressing, hijab dressing, that particular entity is an Islamic. The other side, the other identity, then the interpretation the Supreme Court gave to that judgment, the interpretation of that judgment tells us that every other person can exercise that right. But whether the decision is specifically on the hijab, which is worn by everyone can exercise that right. But the extent to which you can exercise that right is what is important, because it could affect the rights of others. That's what the Supreme Court of Human Rights say. Though I tried to look through the judgment, the entire judgment, that's the one I mentioned earlier, they have against Switzerland, as to know how it could affect any rights. And that has been the anchor of your questions. About two of your questions, how does it affect every other person's right if it is targeted on a particular group? But then we can't fathom an answer. But we all know very well that religious sentiments such as this of hijab has created quite a problem. I think there was one that just called the Cameroonian government to ban it separately. So also the Togolese government, the Ghanaian government. So it's becoming sort of a trend globally that these things should be left to be at bay. And I remember one particular judgment of that one is on Kosi and 93 others against Turkey, where it was clearly spelled out that the wearing of hijab is prone to create a lot of religious sentiments and upheavals within the state of Turkey, even though it is dominantly an Islamic country.
I should mention as well. Now, talking about how it affects larger society and sensibilities and all of that.
Yes.
It's usual to find, yes, other religious sects of the Christian religious organization have any strict uniform attire, just come in which could be anything from a gown to a pair of jeans or whatever, or suits for that matter. For certain Christian religious sects or organizations, as Catholic, those of the Catholic faith, especially those who are ministers in the Catholic religion, have a certain religion. For example, altar boys dress in a certain way while they're ministering, as do priests and reverend fathers and the rest of them. But beyond when they are ministering, for example, altar boys, and I'm using altar boys deliberately, they may be of school age, they may be of secondary school or primary school. Beyond when they are ministering, you don't see them wearing a cassock, or you don't see them wearing whatever what they wear while they're ministering, when they're in the cathedral or when mass is going on. But for Muslims, it's not exactly the same. While they may wear the hijab or other identifying Muslim ornaments when they are at the mosque, they also wear these things when they are at home also, when they are playing with their friends, when they're running an errand for their parents.
That's the difference, Dio.
So, precisely. Now, if for them it is something that they wear not just during worship moments or during official religious activity, why should it be a problem for Christians, for example? Because why should any Christian now state that because of this, my son who's an altar boy will suddenly wear a cassock to school the next day? Because ordinarily he would not do that, but the Muslim girl would ordinarily wear hijab any time of the day.
Yes, you anchored it on a proper point that it's a fundamental right. But those rights are fundamental. There are those that are very natural, that they are not derogable. There are those that are not. A lot of those rights are not absolute. What is important is the fact that the right to freedom of religion is a well-recognized right, and it's also very important to look at some of these principles and doctrines and culture, like dress and all that. And somebody had said that you don't find it anywhere in the Quran or in the Bible. But I'll tell you that it's not a strange thing that the culture of hijab wearing, probably they didn't call it hijab in the Jewish days. It didn't start Islam. It's been the mode of dressing of the religious sects even before the coming of Christ. Covering, the women should cover their faces and all that. It has always been there. But the fact of how it could affect somebody, that's the distinction that has always been made. Because all the judgments, all the decisions I've read so far on this matter anchor on the fact that you can only express that right within the ambit of your religious activity. But the Supreme Court of Nigeria extending it to the domain of these are the distinction, and there's that case, given a particular mode for his dressing, for the dressing of his students, and some of the ladies no. Kosean and 93 others are against the state of Turkey. They said, no, we have to dress in a particular way to reflect our religion. The European Court of Human Rights don't have that right. So if you are practicing, and they have a particular mode of dressing, these are religious societies, Olumba, and the rest of them. If you allow them to be going to school in that mode, what sense of discipline will you be instilling on the children?
Now is that what
as a public function?
Is that what this judgment means? Does the judgment mean that an altar boy can his black robes and all of that, then attached some traditional religious ornaments, a and
I know that from. I did ask. I met him. I was in the Supreme Court on that day, and.
Is that what it means? Is that what it means? And does it mean that also people, someone can dress like that, work anywhere to their place of work?
First of all, you find it that it is right. That's the bottom line. There we can move on. If it is a fundamental right and the Supreme Court denies a right, that the extent everyone people think of that belongs to the Nigerian Bar Association or whatever. That is it. Because fundamental rights, they both drowns every law, and that's what made that decision as far as concerned. And the gentleman was explained, verified that regulation, every other tradition, every other custom or practice. And that's why we're saying that some of these things we are done with every bit of circumspection in other countries, and this thing ought to have been properly defined by the Supreme Court. So it doesn't give a very wrong message to the members of the society. That's my point.
Why would the courts then not entertain the lawyer who dressed in his traditional attire?
The court entertained him, and he told the court what happened, that he has that right by virtue of this. Court said, please address me on that point, and also address me on one other issue bordering on professionalism. But then he put professionalism and all that, all these rules of professional conduct, the rules bordering the Legal Practitioners Act, the law regulating the conduct of lawyers. Will they have any place if you juxtapose it or place it side by side with the fundamental rights of individuals? It cannot.
Oh, what I'm saying is this: there was a court he went to, not the Supreme Court,
the Federal High Court, in
exactly,
Lagos,
where his colleagues in court, other lawyers in court,